Elara had always been a chaser. Not in the way people chase buses down crowded streets, or how children chase after kites drifting away in the wind, but in the quiet, relentless way of someone who believed that if she didn't hold on to people tightly, they would slip away forever. She chased love, attention, validation, always afraid that if she stopped running, there would be nothing left. It started in her childhood. Her father, a man of few words and fewer expressions, had loved her in his own way, but never enough for her to feel it. He was a provider, not an encourager. Her mother, warm but perpetually exhausted, was too preoccupied with the weight of life to notice the unspoken loneliness blooming in her daughter's heart. Elara learned early on that love was something you earned, not something given freely. So she grew into a woman who worked tirelessly for affection, bending herself into shapes that were never hers, just to be seen. She became the friend who always remembered birthdays, the partner who overcompensated for every flaw, the employee who stayed late without being asked. And yet, the more she gave, the more it felt like she was standing in a room pouring water into glasses with holes in the bottom. No matter how much she poured, everything drained away. It was exhausting. When she was 28, she met Daniel. He was magnetic in that effortless way. People seemed to gravitate toward him without him ever lifting a finger. His presence was calm, his voice slow, his eyes deep with the quiet of someone who never felt the need to prove himself. To Elara, he felt like the answer she'd been searching for, like if she could keep someone like him in her life, she would finally be enough. And so, she chased. At first, Daniel seemed to enjoy her attention, but over time, she began to notice subtle shifts. He would take hours to reply to her messages. Cancel plans without explanation. Pull away when she tried to hold him too close. And the harder she tried to win him over, sending thoughtful texts, planning surprises, being endlessly available, the further away he seemed to drift. She couldn't understand it. Wasn't love about effort? Wasn't she doing everything right? One evening, after Daniel canceled yet another dinner, Elara found herself sitting alone in her apartment. She stared at the untouched food on her table, the candles she'd lit hours earlier now burned down to half. Her phone screen glowed faintly beside her plate, but there was no message, no call. The silence in the room felt deafening. It was in that silence that the words of her old mentor came back to her, a woman she had once worked with who practiced energy healing. What you chase will always run, the mentor had told her once. Because chasing is the energy of lack. When you chase, you tell the universe you don't have it, and the universe listens. At the time, Elara had brushed it off as mystical nonsense. But now, alone and drained, it hit differently. She thought about Daniel, about all the people in her life she had tried to hold onto by force, about the opportunities she had pursued with desperation instead of alignment. How many times had she clung to something, only to watch it slip further away? She began to notice the pattern. Chasing wasn't just about running after someone, it was about carrying the belief that you are incomplete without them. And that belief created a gap, a space of emptiness, that could never be filled by force. That night, Elara decided to do something she had never done before. She stopped. She didn't text Daniel. She didn't check his social media. She didn't even rehearse the conversations she might have with him. Instead, she sat on her balcony, closed her eyes, and tried to feel the air around her without wishing it was something else. The first few days were hard. She felt the pull of habit, the itch to reach out, the fear that silence meant loss. But as the days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to happen. She felt lighter. The energy she had been pouring outward began to pool quietly within her. She started going for morning walks, not because Daniel liked active women, but because she liked the way the early sunlight felt on her skin. She began painting again, a hobby she had abandoned years ago, and found that hours could pass without her once thinking of what anyone else thought of her work. She stopped trying to be everywhere for everyone, and the strangest thing happened: people began reaching out to her. Friends invited her over. Colleagues asked her opinion in meetings. Even strangers seemed to notice her more. One evening, she passed by a small bookstore on her way home from work. Something about it called to her, so she stepped inside. The air was warm, scented faintly with paper and vanilla tea. She wandered through the aisles until her eyes landed on a book titled The Law of Energetic Balance. The title alone felt like a sign. The book spoke about the simple truth that energy is reciprocal. When you give without receiving, you create imbalance. When you take without giving, you create debt. And when you stand in your own energy, whole, enough, without need, what is aligned with you will find you naturally. It was as though the universe had handed her the very map she had been missing all her life. She began to understand that chasing was a declaration of incompleteness, but attraction was the quiet confidence of knowing you are already whole. Weeks passed. She felt herself changing, not in the desperate way she had tried to before, but in the grounded, slow way that comes from growth. And then, one afternoon, she received a message from Daniel. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. Can we meet?" The old Elara would have replied instantly, heart pounding, mind spinning with hope. But the new Elara, she simply smiled at her phone, placed it down, and returned to the book she was reading. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was that she finally understood, what was meant for her wouldn't need to be chased. The afternoon Daniel's message arrived, Elara didn't respond right away. She sat quietly, letting the words settle, not in the restless way of the past, but with a kind of curious detachment. She wasn't angry, nor did she feel the old urgency to seize the moment before it slipped away. Instead, she felt an unfamiliar sense of control, not over Daniel, but over herself. She thought back to the last few weeks, the changes that had unfolded in her life. The morning walks, the paintings, the small bookstore visits, they had become part of her rhythm, her sanctuary. For the first time in years, her worth didn't feel like it was dangling on a string in someone else's hand. That night, she journaled. She wrote about the difference between chasing and attracting, about how chasing felt like running with your soul leaning forward, always off balance, while attracting felt like standing still with the quiet assurance that the right things would arrive in their own time. She realized that attraction wasn't about doing nothing, it was about becoming something. A version of yourself so whole, so in alignment, that what you desire can't help but find you. The next morning, she replied to Daniel with a simple, "I'm free next week. Let me know what day works for you. No overthinking. No over-offering. Just balance." When they met at a small cafe a week later, Daniel seemed different. His usual calm was still there, but this time it carried a note of curiosity. He noticed the changes in her. How she didn't hang on his every word, how her eyes wandered around the room with interest, how she wasn't trying to fill every silence. "You seem lighter," he said, stirring his coffee. "I am," she replied, with a small smile. "I stopped trying to make everything happen. It's amazing how much energy you get back when you stop chasing things that don't need to be chased." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't realize how much I'd taken your energy for granted," he admitted. In the past, those words would have been her victory. She would have leaned in, tried to rekindle something, believing his acknowledgement was proof that her chase had been worth it. But now, she simply nodded. She wasn't here to win him back. She was here to honor herself. The conversation flowed easily, but when it ended, she didn't feel the old ache to extend it. They hugged, exchanged polite goodbyes, and went their separate ways. And she felt free. In the weeks that followed, Elara began to notice the law of energetic balance playing out in every corner of her life. At work, she stopped volunteering for extra tasks out of fear of seeming replaceable. She still gave her best effort, but she allowed her contributions to be recognized instead of silently giving more than she received. To her surprise, her manager began to trust her more, offering her leadership roles she had once thought she'd need to beg for. With friends, she no longer sent endless messages to keep connections alive. Instead, she focused on being fully present when they were together. The ones who valued her stayed, and the ones who didn't simply drifted away. No drama, no bitterness. One evening, during a walk by the river, she stopped to watch the water flow. A leaf floated gently on the surface, moving with the current, neither rushing nor resisting. She thought about how much her life had mirrored that leaf lately, not passive, but in harmony with the flow. That's when she realized something profound: the universe doesn't respond to need. It responds to state. When you are desperate, you radiate scarcity, and scarcity attracts more scarcity. But when you are whole, you radiate abundance, and abundance comes back to you. The law of energetic balance wasn't magic, it was alignment. One rainy afternoon, Elara returned to the little bookstore that had first introduced her to the concept. The owner, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, remembered her. "How's the book treating you?" the woman asked. "It's not just a book anymore," Elara said with a quiet laugh. "It's become a way of living." The woman smiled knowingly. Most people think attraction is about manifesting things into existence. But really, it's about becoming a match for what you want. You can't pull something in if you're not vibrating at the same frequency. Elara nodded. She understood now in a way she never could have before. Before leaving, she picked up a small leather-bound notebook from the counter. She decided it would be her balance journal. A place to track her energy exchanges each day. For every interaction, she would ask herself, did this give me energy, take it away, or stay neutral? Months passed, and her life began to feel like a garden in bloom. Opportunities came to her, speaking invitations, art show offers for her paintings, new friendships that felt nourishing instead of draining. Even romance found its way back into her life, but in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, while sketching in the park, a man named Adrian stopped to compliment her work. He was warm and easy to talk to, and their conversation stretched on without either of them checking their phones. But unlike with Daniel, she didn't feel the urge to push, to make him see her, to hurry the connection along. She simply enjoyed the moment. They saw each other again and again, but Elara didn't measure the relationship in terms of progress. She measured it in terms of balance. Did they both give? Did they both receive? Did it feel light instead of heavy? It did. One morning, as she sat on her balcony with tea in hand, Elara thought back to the woman she used to be, the one who chased love, approval, and validation as if her life depended on it. She realized now that she had been chasing herself all along. Because the truth was, she had always been enough. She had just been too busy running after others to notice it. Now, she was still. Whole. Radiant in her own space. And just like the law promised, everything meant for her began to arrive. Final reflection. The law of energetic balance isn't about doing less. It's about being aligned so deeply with your own worth that what you want naturally moves toward you. You don't have to chase love, it will find you. You don't have to beg for opportunities, they will recognize you. And you don't have to run after anyone, because those who are meant for you will walk toward you at the same pace you walk toward them. Elara learned that when you stop chasing, you stop losing yourself. And in that stillness, you become magnetic.